recipe, you can choose to measure in two different ways. You can use your measuring cups and measuring spoons, or you can also use a scale if you have one, right? You will notice that the recipe is in grams, so please make sure your units are in grams. Okay, so mise en place, this means that everything is in its place. I've got everything ready to go, right? I have my wire whisk, my rubber scraper, right? But then I also have my ingredients. So I already have my flour in my large bowl, but I also have my egg, the yeast, some salt, some butter, my sugar, as well as my milk. Everything all measured out and ready to go. All I need to do is throw everything in. So I'm going to throw in my yeast, my salt, and then my sugar. Right? I'm going to take that whisk and whisk this all together and make sure that everything is incorporated nice and evenly first before adding the rest of my liquid ingredients in. Right. When I go to add my liquid ingredients in, I'm going to use my rubber scraper. Right, create a well in the middle of my flour mixture, right, and then I'm going to be able to start pouring stuff in. So I'm going to just mix this egg a little with my whisk, toss that in, and then throw in some of the milk. And then start mixing in, right? Make sure that your butter is nice and soft, right? My butter just came out of the refrigerator, right? So I'm gonna let it go. I might actually put it in the microwave just to soften it a bit. So let's pause for right now. All right, my butter is nice and soft, so I can add that in now. With the rest of this. Scoop that all out. Right. And now we're going to mix this together. Right. Now this is going to be a nice soft dough, right? So please do not add excess flour because you think it's too soft. Right. As you mix, it's going to come together, and then you're going to knead it, right? Knead, K-N-E-A-D, knead it together. Okay. This is what we call the quick mix method. Why? Because I mixed it quickly. Right? I threw everything into the bowl and mixed it all together. Right? We also added some milk. That milk should have been a little warm, right? Somewhere around the temperatures of 115 to 120. Right? That milk can be a little warmer than normal, right? If you look at some recipes, sometimes they will say that the milk should be closer to 105 to 110, but because this is the quick mix method, it can be a little warmer, right? Because I'm mixing it with the other ingredients, opposed to when I put the yeast directly into the warm milk, right? So now that this has all come together, right, I'm going to knead it for a while, 8 to 10 minutes, right? We'll come back once it's all kneaded. How do we knead, right? Let's take this. I put a little flour down. Don't put excessive amounts of down. Again, you don't want it to be dry, right? But it is going to be a little sticky. Right? So put some flour down on your counter, right? Have a pile to the side just in case you need a little more. And roll out that dough onto your counter. Right? You're going to want to put a little flour onto your hands just so that it doesn't stick. Right? And then you're going to knead it, right? Which means that, I'm going to just add a little more flour until my hand stops sticking. Right? Take that and fold it. Use the palm of that hand and push it down. Right? Turn it around, right? And then keep on kneading it, right? If it still sticks a little, add a little more flour, right? But again, add little amounts at a time, right? The more you knead it, the softer it's going to get, because all of that is getting kneaded together and incorporated together. Right. Now, those gluten strands, that protein in the flour, right, is developing. We want it to develop a lot, which is why we need the dough for a long amount of time. Like I've said, 8 to 10 minutes, right? So we'll be back in 8 to 10 minutes after we've kneaded this for a little while. All right, so we've been kneading for a while. Now the question is, how do I know when I'm finished, right? When I'm done kneading. So what you want to do is you want to take that dough and pull it apart. Can you kind of get a pane, right? These are those gluten strands. You want to see if you can kind of get a translucent pane between your dough, right? Once you think that you are finished with your dough, right? If it's still stuck, scrape it up a little, right? And what I want you to do is you're going to put it in a clean bowl, right? Whether that was the original bowl you started with and you cleaned it, or you got another one, but clean bowl, right? You're going to spray it on the inside so that it does not stick, right? Do the last few kneading that you want to do, right? Make sure that you don't see any flour, right? And then put it in your bowl. And then what I like to do is I just like to spray the top. That way, when it rises, right, then it will, it won't stick to the plastic wrap. So put a little plastic wrap on top. This plastic wrap does not need to be super secure. Just lightly put it on top of here, right? And then what I actually like to do is just to kind of make sure that it stays, is I like to just put a towel on top. This helps to prevent it from drying out. Right now, put this in somewhere kind of warm, right? But not near a draft, meaning you don't have a lot of air movement, right? A common place to put it is in your oven, right? Don't turn your oven on, clearly, but you can put it in your oven, and that's a good place that it isn't drafty, and it can rise, right? So you let it rise somewhere between 2 to 4 hours. It should double in size. So when you look at it now, this is what it looks like, and we will come back in 2 to 4 hours to see what it looks like after it has risen. All right, we are back to finish up our English muffins. Here is the dough. Whoa, it has really popped. Like I said, it should be doubling in size, right? So what we need to do is we need to, what they say, punch down, right? So punching down makes it sound a little violent. We're not really going to punch our dough, but what you're essentially doing is going to be deflating it, right? And releasing all that carbon dioxide. When you take the saran wrap off, you might be able to smell kind of that alcohol, like yeasty smell from that one byproduct of alcohol, and then that other byproduct is that carbon dioxide, right? So what you want to do is you just want to lightly kind of just deflate it, right? Pull it away from the sides here, okay? And so now I've just kind of deflated it a little, allowing it to release the carbon dioxide gas, right? So what I am actually going to do is I'm going to just put it down on the counter so that I can, let's see if we can just do it like this. All right, so I'm going to divide this dough into 16 pieces, right? So to do 16 pieces, right, actually I am going to put a little flour down. It is sticking a little too much for my liking. All right, so just place a little flour. Right, there we go. All right. All right, so 16 pieces. So that means that if I take this dough and I cut it in half, right? You could use a scale if you have it, if you really want to kind of be more exact, but you know, this is home cooking. If I were doing this commercially, then yes, I would. However, I'm not. I'm just doing this for funsies at home, so I'm gonna just cut these as evenly as possible. All right, I'm using a bench knife. You could use a butter knife, whatever works best for you. All right, so I have 4 pieces now. Sorry, I'm gonna cut these 4 pieces into halves again, which is going to give me 8 pieces. This is a perfect example of using fractions in real life. A lot of you always ask when you're ever going to use math in real life. Here's a perfect example. Right, and now I have 8, which means now I need to cut these in half again to get my 16. Right, so all right. So perfect. They don't have to be exactly perfect, but a good, close enough. All right. So now what I have to do is I actually have to roll these into dough balls. Okay. Now the one thing about English muffins is that they are actually not baked. Instead, they are fried. Okay. Or I shouldn't say fried. They're cooked on a griddle or a frying pan, a skillet, whatever it is you want to use, right? And so the way this works is that you have to actually let these rise one more time. So I'm just putting these all into nice little balls, dough balls here, and then I'm going to actually let them rise one more time. And actually, if you have a griddle, it works best just to put them all on if you can get as many on there and let them rise so that you can just turn your griddle on and then you can start cooking them. So you don't actually bake these, which is always kind of a little different than what most people are used to when making yeast breads, right? So like I said, I'm just rolling these all out and then I will turn it over and show you the griddle. Right. Now, some of the recipes will tell you that you can use semolina flour or like cornmeal or whatever, and that's entirely up to you. I don't actually use it just because it's just an extra step that I don't feel is necessary. I think that they come out just fine without it. But if that's something you want to try, you are more than welcome to. It just gives that kind of, if you kind of ever had a English muffin like Thomas's English Muffins or whatever, it has kind of that like grainy feeling on the bottom of your English muffins. That's that semolina flour or cornmeal. Alright, so rolling these all into balls. Alright, and then I actually have like a fairly large griddle, so I actually think I might be able to fit most of these onto my griddle at once, which will be fantastic because then I can cook them all at once. Alright, so as I roll these all in, and then I'm going to kind of scooch my way over, right? Like I think I've shown you this before in previous demonstrations, but here is my griddle. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to actually take my take these, okay, and then excuse me. Alright, so just place them directly on here. If you don't have a big large griddle like that, that is perfectly fine. Just use a cookie sheet or something and you can place them on there. And then you're actually just going to cover it for about 20 minutes and let them rise one more time. And that way they don't dry out. It does tell you if you can to kind of just flatten them. So once you get them onto either your pan or your griddle, you can just flatten them out a little. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cover this and just let them sit here for another 20 minutes, right? You might have heard me say that there was a, there's a second rise. So we let the dough rise, right? And now we go ahead and shape our dough, right? And then we go ahead and let them rise again before we cook them. Okay, so get all of these on here. Right, like I said, this dough is going to be nice and soft and pliable. Okay. Alright, so all 16 are on here. What I'm going to do is just kind of flatten these out. You want those kind of English muffins to be nice and flat. Right. You know that they're kind of homemade when they're not all exactly the same, right? And they're not all exactly rounded. They might be slightly misshapen, right? That kind of shows that kind of homemade look of an English muffin. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to cover this, right, and let this kind of just sit for 20 minutes, then proof one more time, or rise. Okay, and again, I'm just letting it kind of be loose on here. It doesn't need to be super tight, just so that they don't dry out on me, right, because they're nice and kind of moist right now, so don't want them too dry. Alright. And so I will see you in about 20 minutes to bake these off, or to cook them off, I should say. Right, and then we can eat them. Welcome back. We are going to cook off these English muffins, and then we will be able to eat them. Right, so you can see that they have risen, not huge amounts, but a little. They should puff up a little. They're definitely not going to double in size the way the dough did originally, but they should get slightly larger. Alright, so what I need to do is I'm just going to cook these on low for 7 to 10 minutes. Ideally, you want the interior of this to be about 200 degrees. If you don't have a thermometer, that's perfectly fine. But generally, we want it to be a nice kind of golden brown on the bottom. One of the issues, though, is that if you cook it too quickly, it'll cook the outside first versus the inside. If that happens, you can also put these into the oven at 375 and bake them for another about 10 minutes or so to get them to cook all the way through. So, like I said, if you have the griddle, that'd be awesome. I'm gonna put this at my griddle at about 300 or so, 250, 300. If you're gonna do it on the stove in a frying pan, you can do it kind of like low to medium low, so somewhere probably around 3, 4, maybe 5. That might be a little too hot. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna let these kind of slowly cook, and then I will flip it over. So I will see you in about 5 minutes, so that I can flip them over. And then I'll show you how to kind of open them up with a fork. Okay, so you can see the English muffins have started to cook. I'm going to look onto the bottom of this, and it looks nice and brown, so I'm going to flip these over. Separate them. If they get a little stuck, that's perfectly fine. Just flip them all over so that they can cook on the other side. Right. I had started it at about 250, 300. I think that might have been a little too high, so I actually turned it down to about 200, because like I said, I want to make sure that the insides are fully cooked as well. So, just flip these all over just like they were pancakes. Nice dark brown, golden brown color. There we go. And then I'm going to just let those continue to cook on the other side until the other side is nice and golden brown as well. Alright. Alright, so I'll be back to show you what they look like as the final product, and show you how to actually split English muffin. Alright, so these English muffins look like they're done on both sides, right? Brown on both sides. You can kind of flip them over again just to check. These did bake a little, or cook a little faster than I thought they would. They browned a lot faster, so I probably will put them into the oven for about, at 350 for about 10 minutes, because I want to make sure that the insides are kind of finished and not super gooey on the inside. So the way we can figure that out is you can, if you, like I said, have a thermometer, you can ensure the inside is 200 degrees. However, it's not so common to have a thermometer. So if that is the case, we can just kind of cut into it, and you can kind of see what it looks like from the inside. Oops. Just want to flip these all over to see the other side of this. And I'm going to take this little guy and see, because if the little one is definitely not done, then obviously the bigger ones are not going to be done either. So when you do this, please be careful because they will be hot. But generally speaking, when you split an English muffin, you don't actually use it with a knife, you do it with a fork. Because the whole purpose of those English muffins is to have those nooks and crannies. So that like when you put butter in it, it kind of melts into all those little nooks and crannies of your English muffin. So what you can do is instead you take a fork. Okay, so you take this English muffin and you cut it around with your fork, like so, and it will split apart. And you should hopefully have. Oh, these are definitely. Hopefully, it shouldn't be flat across when you cut into it. It should be nice and kind of uneven when you cut into it. You should let these cool all the way down. However, I just wanted to cut into it so you could see. But you can see how there's all these little nooks and crannies. That's what makes it kind of that traditional English muffin. But yeah, these are definitely not cooked all the way through, so I will be baking them for a little longer to ensure that they're cooked through. All right, so that is English muffins, and I hope that you enjoy, and I will see you next time.